If we have some problem, we can go to the police. But, what if the police themselves have a problem? Where would they go? In today's video, we will be looking about a phone call which had haunted the American police. So, let's get started. It was a fine day in the USA. Everyone were carrying on with their work peacefully. The emergency officer in 911 was also not so busy. He had no emergency calls that day, but only till 1 p.m. He attended the call, and from the other side of the call, he could sense a frightened voice that belonged to a man. Even before the emergency officer could ask what is the problem, the frightened man said with fear that a strange man was standing outside his home for a long time and was staring at his door. He added that he was viewing the man through a lens in his door. Needless to say, the emergency officer could sense that the man was really frightened using his tone. The emergency officer told the man, that is the owner of the house, not to panic and said that he would be conversing continuously with him so that the owner diverts himself. Then, the officer asked the owner about the identity of the strange man. The man answered that the strange man was a tall lean person with swollen cheeks and an appearance similar to a tribal. The officer then asked the owner, if the strange person has any object in his hand. It was at this point of time, the owner started to scream. When the officer asked the owner why he was screaming, the owner told the officer that the strange man had a huge sword in one hand, and his pet dog in the other. The owner told the officer that he was really afraid and that the strange man looked very aggressive. The officer again told the owner not to panic. He asked another question to the owner. And this time, he asked what dress was the strange person wearing. The owner told the officer that, the strange person was wearing a coat suit along with a tie. He mentioned that the man looked so formal, but was looking as brutal as how formal he looked. The officer then asked if there was anyone nearby, and the owner replied that there was nobody else except the strange person who was standing there for about 3 hours and staring at his house. So, the owner was worried if the strange person would do any harm to him and thus requested the officer to give him some protection. The officer told him not to worry and said him that he would send 3 policemen to his home for protection and found his location by tracking the phone call. And the conversation between the officer and the owner went on for a few minutes. Finally, the officer told the owner that he was going to end the call. But, the frightened owner pleaded him to continue to speak with him and divert his attention. Just a few moments after saying this, the owner screamed again. When the officer asked why, the owner told him that the strange person had slashed and cut off the head of his pet dog that he was holding in his hand. This made the owner even more worried and urged the officer to send the police troops as fast as he could. So, the officer told the owner to stay in line till he contacts the police from another phone to know where they are. The police said that they would arrive at the spot in 10 minutes. And this information was relayed to the owner by the officer. After 5 minutes, the owner again started to scream. The officer asked what happened, and the owner said him that the strange person had spread some substance over the door lens through which he was seeing, and thus the owner was not able to see anything that happened outside. Random thoughts came over the owner's mind. Through which door will the strange person enter his home? Will he even survive? Why is he doing all this? So, the officer told him that he will keep talking with him until the police arrive and advised him to be calm and quiet. And the police too arrived at the spot soon. All 3 policemen went in different directions and searched everywhere outside the home. But, there was no sign of anyone. So, the police called the officer and told him that they have arrived at the spot and also conveyed that there was no one outside the home. But, the emergency officer was still speaking with the owner. So, the officer thought that the strange person had already entered the owner's home and the owner was not aware about it. So, he told one of the policemen to enter the house through the back door and search if the strange person was inside. The policeman went inside the home and saw a man sitting at one corner of the room speaking with the emergency officer with a telephone. That person informed the emergency officer that a policeman has arrived, and now, The officer told him to hand over the phone to the police, and he did what the officer had said. The policeman said the officer that they have arrived and said that the owner was safe. He added that, only after seeing the policeman, he could see a smile on the owner's face. But, that statement had created a confusion for the officer. He was shocked that the police saw him smiling. Because, his pet dog had died. Then how can he smile? While these thoughts flashed through the emergency officer's mind, the officer asked one question to the policeman there. The question was, how does the owner look like? The policeman said that the owner was lean, tall, with swollen cheeks and had an appearance similar to a tribal. As soon as the emergency operator heard this news, he was stunned. He asked the policeman another question: what was the owner wearing? The policeman answered that the owner was formal, wearing a coat suit with a tie. The next second, the emergency officer screamed and said to the policeman that the person who was next to him is not the owner, but the strange person whom they had been looking for. Before the emergency officer could complete his sentence, the strange person killed the policeman. One of the other two policemen had heard some noise inside the house. And since the first policeman was already inside the house, he too went inside through the front door, leaving the third policeman alone. While the second policeman was entering the home, he saw a filthy sight of blood flowing like water. It was coming from a dead dog. The policeman ignored the dog and went inside the home. Inside the home, he saw another filthy sight of blood flowing. But this time, it came from the first policeman. Before the second policeman could look around to see if the killer was around, the strange person killed the second policeman too. Now, the third policeman heard some noise from inside the house. But, he didn't go inside. Instead, the patient policeman dialed the emergency officer and told him the news. The emergency officer told him not to enter the house, saying that the killer they had been searching for is inside the house, and that he had killed the other two policemen along with the owner and his dog. So, the emergency officer told the third policeman to wait for a few minutes, and at the same time, the officer sent few backup policemen to the spot. As soon as the backup policemen arrived, all of them broke into the house. All they could see are two dead policemen. They next went into the other rooms to see if the killer was hiding somewhere there. But, they could find no one. Meanwhile, the third policeman went to the kitchen and saw the fridge kept open. Inside the fridge, was a dead body. And that belonged to the owner of the house. Next, they sent his body for post-mortem. From the report, they got a shocking information. The owner was killed before 7 to 8 hours before the police had come. It was at this point in time, the police realized that the killer had already killed the owner and had made this plan to trap the police. The killer was the person who had been speaking to the emergency officer for the entire incident and the identity of the owner. The case had ended and the three bodies were autopsied. The next day, the emergency officer went back to work. Again, he received a call. The speaker had said that there is a strange man outside my home wearing a coat suit. He is tall and lean, and has swollen cheeks, and told the officer that he was really afraid. The emergency officer was like, wait. I had heard this voice somewhere. The emergency officer knew that it was the same strange man who killed two policemen the previous day. Similarly, the strange person had killed someone else on the day and was speaking in their place. Immediately, he had sent a large troop of policemen. But, the policemen could find nothing except two dead people. Similarly, there were 12 such cases being reported. And the killer is not identified till date. We don't know who he is, and where he is. Now, I want to ask you a question. What was the motive behind this killer who set traps exclusively for policemen? Now, unleash your creative side. Put down your answer in the comments section below. I will meet you with a brand new video. Until then, goodbye.